Hello, welcome to tonight's poetry deep dive on boundaries and self-worth based on my poem, Your Every Accusation is a Confession. And as usual, what I'll be doing is I will be reading about two other poems as an intro and as an introduction, as a foundation for the main poem, which is the title, Your Every Accusation is a Confession. And let me also put this in the comments and pin it. And yeah, not actually, I also need to put not an open mic. All right. All right. Hello. All right. And the reason I'm very specific in the topic title is context matters, and you cannot universalize these types of topics, especially regarding boundaries and reclaiming self-worth, the way we as racialized or colonized creatives have to reclaim our boundaries is different from non-racialized people or the colonizers. They have to, the way their process is just different because they're the oppressors. They have to unravel and deprogram from their own reverse victimhood mindset. Whereas for us, it's more about deprogramming from the fawn trauma response and other trauma responses, and really reclaiming our self-worth from the outright lies and manipulations and bullshit that they tell us, the colonizer narratives. So it's a very different process. And as much as they would like to pretend that the process is the same, it's not. And this is why I would never hire a non-racialized person as my coach, for example. At least I used to, but not anymore. I don't think I would anymore, since they would never truly understand, I don't think. And yeah, so starting with this poem, It Was Never About Me. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, where reclaiming self-worth, especially these feelings of too much and not enough, cannot be done from an individualist perspective. It has to be done from a collective perspective, because when they say too much, they're not just referring to me as an individual. They're saying there's too much of people like me, too much of people who look like me. That's what they're saying. It's a whole other level. Audre Lorde wrote about this in her essay, Age, Race, Class, and Sex. In fact, this poem is inspired by that essay. So let me get right to it. It was never about me. Poetry by Kundan Chabra. Sunrise in the salt-filled oceans above my nose, moon hidden deep inside, sun still shining on it despite my shame. Argent's bow striking away my doubts, showing me the beauty of the boat and revealing my true name. It's okay to be different. Trying to appease them colonizers by proving we are the same only gives them more dominance. And why would I even want to be the same as the most violent, manipulated people in the history of the world? Because it was never because I was different, but it was about making surplus people who can be used but never provided. Too much and not enough are two sides of the same coin. Neither is about me, but what they believe about me, what they want to believe about me, and what they want me to believe about me. Too much means too much of this population of whom I'm a part of, not just too much of me, my energy, my personality. Not enough isn't just about me inherently, but about them being greedy and entitled, never satisfied at my contribution, but always taking and giving nothing back. It was never about me. It was about them. So to paraphrase Alok Menon, it's time I make a garden in their shame. Watch me bloom. Poem. And yeah, and as you can see, I'm very specific in my poem. When I say them, I'm not referring to a generalized them. I'm referring to a very specific them. I'm referring to the colonizers. And yeah, I am done with their BS colonizer narratives. And that is how I'm reclaiming my self-worth, and that is how I am establishing boundaries, by reclaiming my self-worth, by unraveling and decolonizing and deprogramming from the lies they've told me about me, my culture, etc. In fact, the next poem is the same message, but now I'm also unraveling from the bullshit lies they tell me about my culture and my ancestors. So this is called No More Baiting. I used to see myself. Hi, Yellow Heart. Yeah, thank you. Freaking love that. Watch me bloom. Exactly. All right, this is a poem. No more baiting. I used to see myself only as clickbait of articles, videos, and books the colonizers wrote about my ancestors, claiming they worshipped rivers and trees and stars and sky and sun because they were stupid, claiming my ancestors folded their hands in front of stone deities because they were evil, claiming my ancestors were violent rulers, simultaneously claiming my ancestors did not even exist. Huh. Which one is it? Huh? Which one is it? It doesn't matter, because being paid for clicks and pats on the back as civilizing saviors in the pretense of being morally superior is all that matters to them. In reality, I was a magnifying glass that magnified and focused the heat of their cheeks flushing, their hands twitching, their heads hung down, their eyes downcast at the thought of what actually they had done to my ancestors. These colonizers couldn't stand the thought that they could be anything other than bright burning superior sun, forgetting that Surya, sun, would be nothing without dark sacred Chandamama, moon mother. So they built a narrative that my ancestors did it to themselves and to each other, something unimaginable, because we understood light couldn't even exist without shadows, and superiority is impossible in a universe of interconnectivity, because intelligence only comes from being tapped in and interconnected with the everything is everything, the Meva. Not from bigger brains, nor having more neurons, nor skull shapes, nor straight hair, nor thin bodies, nor light skin, nor any other delusions these colonizers still believe in. I am done. Because despite the shields, smoke, and screens they use to deflect the rays of Satya truth, Satya itself has been my ultimate ancestor, protecting me from my loneliest moments, because it's always been timeless and always been in touch with me, even back then, still now, and forever. Poem. Hi Kapoor Prabha, hi yellow hearted type of girl, and that's that poem. And yeah, I think that poem is self-explanatory. There's all these lies that they tell us that are actually contradictory. On the one hand, they say my ancestors were violent savages, and they still say my people are violent savages. They just use different terms. Uh, since they can no longer use the term savage, instead they try to paint a narrative uh, that we're still savages. But on the other hand, they claim that my ancestors did not even exist. So it's like, which one is it? Were they violent savages or did they not exist? Make up your own damn mind. So I'm done. I'm reclaiming the truth. That is the ultimate way for us racialized, colonized people to decolonize. Reclaim the truth, satya, from the colonizer narratives that they paint and call it social justice. That's the worst part about it. They think of themselves as morally superior social justice activists, even though they're just telling oppressive colonizer narratives. By the way, this is why I consider the word savage to be a racial slur against my people, as well as the word thug to be a racial slur against my people. Can you teach me to open my heart like you're right, but I want to touch? Yes. Touch others with my words. I love you. Yes. Yes. An open heart starts with having clear, strong boundaries first. I have a t-shirt that says wide open heart and a big tall fucking fence around it. And that is why I'm doing this live, to help you establish these boundaries. Hi Nightingale, welcome, welcome. I'm glad to see you here again. Hi Maris Monarch, you are just in time for the finale poem, and then I recited two other poems as an intro, and now we're going into the finale, and then I'll go into the context behind this poem. This is called Your Every Accusation is a Confession. Dear colonizer, you called us savage because you could not dominate us completely but only partially, little by little. You called us churl because we were protecting our lands. This was offensive to you. You called us boor because our technology was simple yet effective, without being invasive against nature. You called us villains because you were afraid of our retaliation, even though it's only you who keep escalating disproportionately after claiming false victimhood. Churl, boor, savage, villain, they all meant one thing back in the day. The peasants, the village people, the people of the land called indigenous today, whom you demonize as violent to make yourself the victimized hero savior, and simultaneously exotified us as simpletons because of our harmony with nature. And the very fact these words remain in your language shows me that your hatred of us still exists. And in fact, it's magnified because you have conveniently forgotten where these words even come from. Easy to gaslight when almost nobody bothers to look up the origins of these words, isn't it? No more. Poem. And that's that piece. So it's inspired by my discovery that the origin, the etymology, the origin of the word villain comes from the word villager or peasant. Let me put that in the comment as well. So the original villains were the peasants because they were the first people to be villainized. And it's the same typical reverse victimhood that they keep doing, right? They villainized 10 million of my ancestors, these Kali worshipping tribes. They criminalized them as thugs, including newborn babies, and then they killed all of them, including newborn babies. It was a 10 million genocide. And, and, and because it continues, this word thug and savage continues to be used to commit genocide against my people, this is why I consider those words to be racist slurs against my people. And that's why I only use these words within the context of talking about my oppression or the oppression of my people. I would never use these words to, in a casual way, like thug life or that's so savage. I would never say stuff like that because it is a racist slur against my people. And this is why, right? Even the origin of the word villain comes from the word uh, villager, because what they were doing was they started villainizing them, and eventually the meaning of the word changed because they kept villainizing the villains, the villagers, and the original villains, right? And because they were doing the same typical reverse victimhood, they will always pretend they're victims, and while they're bullying and oppressing and killing the people that they're colonizing. And they do this to this day. And as I started looking at, the synonyms for the word villain, like churl and bore, I noticed slight differences between the synonyms, and and that's how I ended up writing this poem, because they all mean the same thing, but there are also slight differences, and even those differences are very revealing. And the fact that these words still remain in their language shows their hatred of us still remains. And to me, besides the words like churl and savage, the word bore is especially revealing because it kind of refers to a simpleton. Because this goes back to my diagram on the false binaries, right? The good, evil, false binary. And then there is the demonization, exotic perfection, false binary. Either we're called the peaceful monk, the noble savage, or we're called the violent thugs, right? So we're either violent savages or we're noble savages. We're either peaceful monks or we're thugs. And we're not allowed the middle ground of just being human, of being flawed human beings. So the word bore is the other side of that pendulum swings, calling us simpletons, right? Because our technology was simple. And the reason why it was simple and yet effective without being invasive against nature is because it wasn't about machine supremacy and conquering nature and using so many different machine parts. It was more about being in harmony with nature. So, for example, our buildings did not need any air conditioning because they were designed in such a way to be in harmony with nature that they were cool, naturally cool in the summer and warm in the winter. That's how it was designed. We had an entire architectural system called Vastu. In fact, it was so advanced that we did not even need these fancy newfangled electronic alarm systems that we do today. The buildings were designed in such a way that, for example, a small whisper or noise in one part of the building can be heard very loudly in another part of the building. So you know immediately when an intruder comes in, just by the way the building is designed. It's built into the design of the building. In fact, Sadhguru has a wonderful TED Talk, a video about explaining our technology versus theirs, right? And even their technology is slowly becoming more like ours. They're playing catch up, right? look at computers, for example. There was once a time when computers were as big as entire rooms. They needed to occupy entire rooms because remember what they were doing was machine supremacy. They wanted to take up space. That was their mindset, and they didn't know any better. And but slowly over time, computers have become smaller and smaller, and now we have these mini computers, these computers in our palms. But if you look at the pattern, the machine parts, right? There are less and less machine parts, but the technology is becoming more and more advanced. It's becoming more and more magical. It's like a magic mirror now. And our murtis that they call idols, which is why I would never use that term to describe our murtis, because they're not idols, okay? That's a colonizer term that they use to destroy our murtis and then kill us, destroy our temples, our mandirs. Our murtis were, in a way, very similar to this idea of energy machines without parts, where uh, a lot of the devotees could have a direct connection with the universe. And that's how we have geniuses like Ramnujam, for example, who had entire math equations coming directly from Ma, right? From Ma Devi that he referred to as Ma. And yeah, it's more and more organic. So our murtis are literally the ultimate energy machines without parts. And it's kind of sad that we've lost so much of what it meant to my ancestors, like, especially since they destroyed so many of our ancient universities like Nandala and all of this, which was, one of the very first, the Hindu universities were like the first universities back in the day. And they're even trying to change that narrative with some other BS as well. Uh, but yeah, uh, we had the world's first universities. We discovered the laws of motion long before Newton did. We discovered gravity long before Newton. We were squaring the circle to a good enough approximation long before. Actually, the Western colonizers, I think they still think squaring the circle is impossible. We've kind of already done it. It's a close enough approximation because we needed it to do our fire rituals, our Agni yagnas. Uh, because they're different shapes. Sometimes they're square and then sometimes they're half circles. And so we needed to square our circles. So the way our science and our spirituality are so intertwined, right? So it may look simple only because it's more about tapping into the interconnected intelligence of nature that already exists. It's not about having so many machine parts. Similarly, I know a lot of indigenous people, I forget the tribe, I think in the Philippines, that could navigate the oceans without any instruments by direct awareness. You know, they had direct awareness. They weren't just looking at the stars, they literally could expand their awareness to navigate. And the colonizers only believed in their external instruments, right? So that's another example of uh, a direct technology without machines, right? Because it's more about being one with nature instead of this machine supremacy, this reductionist approach that they believe in. And the colonizers looked down on them, and they ended up killing those tribes and destroying that practice, that very highly advanced technology. Yeah. And now these same colonizers try to pretend, they've discovered some ancient awareness practices when they're doing their so-called mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness itself is like $1 billion industry now. After killing so many of us, now they're trying to profit from very watered-down versions of it. By the way, mindfulness and these very advanced awareness practices have been reduced to corporate harmony in the workplace. to have more productive, efficient workers for capitalism and colonialism. That's what it's been reduced to, basically. So yeah, we have to be aware of these things, of this historical context in which these terms come from, and that's how we reclaim our boundaries and self-worth as racialized, colonized people. For us, the process is very different from what the colonizers have to go through. They have to go through overcoming uh, their reverse victimhood mindset and their guilt and their shame that comes from that reverse victimhood, their fear of retaliation, and really get into genuine empathy and remorse and remorseful amends. That's how they can reclaim their self worth. Our process of reclaiming our self worth is literally decolonizing from the bullshit that they've told us. That's how we do it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's the poem. I recited the poem. It was never about me, no more baiting, and this one, your every accusation is a confession. I do intend for these lives to be kind of short. So yeah, that's it for today. Peace and love. Bye.